Hello and welcome to this course in photo restoration using Photopea. Photopea is very similar to Adobe Photoshop. It can be used to retouch photos, restore damaged photos, and create images such as raster illustrations. In this series, you'll learn to use Photopea to restore and enhance old damaged photos. But first, let's get to know the program a little bit. We'll start by going to a search engine and type in Photopea, and we'll go to photopea.com. Now, Photopea works in your browser, so there's nothing to download or install. And now we're on the Photopea homepage, and we see Account highlighted in red. And if you'll notice on the bottom, we can see the types of files that Photopea will work with. It'll work with .psd, which is Photoshop. It also works with Adobe Illustrator, Sketch, XCF, which is GIMP, RAW, and JPEG, and PNG, and other file formats such as that. And if you click Account, we can see there's a free option available which offers all the features, and the premium is $3.33 a month, but it features no ads, twice as many steps in history, and quick email support. Now we can see the privacy policy and the terms of use, such as using Google Drive as your storage. And to set up an account, you can log in using Google, Facebook, GitHub, or Microsoft. Now, when we click under the Business Terms button, we'll see Contact Information, which provides an email address and a phone number, the refund policy, and the terms of delivery. So now, let's go ahead and open a photo, and what I'll do is go to File, Open, and I already have a picture in mind that I want to demonstrate, and it's called Faded Antique Photo. This is an old photo that's on my computer's hard drive, so we'll open that. Now let me collapse this dialog. Now let me just briefly go over the interface. To the left is the toolbar. If you've ever used an image editing program, you'll be familiar with this. As a matter of fact, this toolbar bears a strong resemblance to the one you would find in Photoshop or GIMP or a similar program. And then at the top is the menu bar, where you can open and close files, perform certain types of edits, make certain adjustments in the image, access layers, and so on. I won't spend a lot of time going over this because over the course of this series of tutorials, we'll be covering these as we go along. So now, the first thing I want to do, well, let me explain what I want to do in this picture first. We can see it's a faded, kind of a dull black and white picture. It's an older picture, probably from the early 20th century. So the first thing I want to do is make an improvement on that. I'll show you a couple of different ways you can do that. I'm going to open an adjustment layer. Now the first thing I'll do is go to Brightness Contrast. Now the Brightness Contrast dialog is really a basic tool. It's really designed for images that are probably not quite as severe as this, but we'll go ahead and try it on this one because we can still improve it. Now the first thing we'll do, let's move the contrast slider to the right, and we can see we boosted the contrast, but if you'll notice in these lighter areas, which are called highlights, some of the detail is starting to vanish. So let's move the brightness slider to the left a little bit, and we can see we have a better looking image. But as I mentioned, the brightness contrast dialog is really one of the most basic tools, and there are better ones to serve this purpose, to brighten dull images. So I'll show you another one. Let me go ahead and discard that layer and collapse this. Now, I'm going to open a new one, but this time I'll use levels. And let me open this. Now we can see this icon that looks kind of like a mountain range. What this is it's image data. And if you'll notice, on the far left there's a little black square. In the middle there's a little gray square. On the right there's a little white square. On the left hand side, this represents the darkest parts of the image, or the shadow area, or shadows as it's called. In the middle, this represents the mid-ranges, and on the right this represents the highlights, or the lightest areas. So let's go ahead and move this little black square just to where the image data starts. Now we can see here we've made a great improvement already. Now if we notice on the right, the white square already starts where there's image data, so we don't really need to do anything with that. But in the middle, what we'll do is move this mid-range slider a little bit to the left, just to brighten the image a bit. So now we can see, using the levels dialog, we've made a nice improvement in this image and retained most of the detail in the highlighted area. Now the next step would be to save this photo, and in most cases, if you have multiple layers, you want to save those in case you ever have to go back and re-edit the picture. So to do that, we'll go to File and then Save as PSD. PSD is actually Photoshop's native file format. This would be useful if you're doing any work and you have to exchange files with someone that uses Photoshop. And one thing to consider is, if you use the Save button, it will save your image to your computer's hard drive as just a JPEG flattened image, but it will save all the changes you made. So if you want a copy of the original file, I recommend using the Save as PSD. It'll save it as a separate file, and you'll retain the original file should you ever need it for any reason. Well, I hope you found that tutorial helpful, and in the meantime, if you'd like to see some examples of my work, just go to philipwitt.portfolio.pb.online/digital photo editing.